Hello, hello. We are back with another episode of the Mystic Parlor podcast. And this episode is a mix between audio and visual. So I have visual for the YouTube channel and then audio, which you are hearing on Spotify. With that said, now that you know, you can visit my YouTube channel, The Mystic Parlor, and subscribe there for video content. And if you're here on YouTube, you can subscribe to my Spotify to listen to interviews and podcasts that I have up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Over on the Spotify and Apple podcast, I have interviews with various people. I do monthly reports and other interests and topics that I like to talk about regarding hypnosis and astrology. Here, I wanted to do visual or add the visual element because I wanted to share the screen and show you the astrology charts while I'm talking about it. Because today we're going to talk about the nodes shifting into Aries and Libra, which is something I've been thinking about, ruminating over, conceptualizing for the better half of this entire year. So, with that said, let's get straight into it. What are the nodes in astrology? The nodes in astrology are the north and the south nodes of the moon. So, they're imaginary points which we chart, and the north and south nodes look like a horseshoe symbol, upright and reverse. The upright symbol represents the north node. The south node is represented with a horseshoe upside down. So, or you can imagine an archway with two circles at the ends, or a rainbow. It's like a rainbow, an upside down rainbow or a right side up rainbow. The north node represents what we are here in our lives to accomplish while we're here. This is the journey that we have chosen, the path that we have chosen in this lifetime. And the south node represents where we're coming from, what past lives experiences that we have inherently come into this life with the innate knowing of. So, for example, when we think of child prodigies, for instance, children who just have a skill that they come into this life with, whether it be a musical talent, science, what have you, or maybe they just start talking very early for their age. Oftentimes that will be represented in their south node and where the south node is associated in their chart. The south node is a lot of things. I mean, the nodes are so much and they have so many different representations, or the nodes are understood and they're studied in Vedic astrology and evolutionary astrology. So those are the two sects of astrology that you'll hear the nodes used or referenced a lot. And in evolutionary astrology, which is sidereal or Western astrology, the nodes represent our evolutionary path. And it can also speak to the types of karma that you have incurred from past lives, that you're here to now overcome, settle the score with, rebalance for yourself, and also utilize. I think that when we think about karma, oftentimes it's considered in the perception of a detriment or a debt, but it's not always the case. There are times where we have built dharma for ourselves, and in this lifetime, we're here to receive the rewards of that dharma from past lives. How many times have you been in a situation in your life where you are in need of something, where you need help, you need guidance, and then that helping hand comes along out of the blue, seemingly out of nowhere, through a friend or a close relationship or even a stranger? It is my belief that it is your dharma that has allowed you to utilize or access that bank account. The south node can be considered the bank account, and whether it is depleted or filled is really based off of your soul path, your soul journey. I don't think it's as cut and dry. Of course, I don't think it's very literal in that way where you do a lot of good deeds, you have a big bank account. I think that it's much more complicated than that, where we choose on the other side maybe how much we enter this life with. And we decide if we want to go down the path where we are incurring more dharma or working off the karma. So the nodes in our charts, I love working with the nodes. If you've ever gotten a reading with me, you'll hear me talk about the nodes often, especially because I get clients who need help with direction, their future, what to focus on, their life path, their goals, things like that. And the North Node and the South Node are really wonderful tools to help us to understand for ourselves when it comes to making big life decisions, what's in alignment for us and what is not, or maybe what is holding us back or hindering our growth. The way I explain it is that usually you will be coming up against your north and south nodes whenever it's time to make a big decision. And you can feel the pull of the south node, which will bring you back or hold you into a state of stagnation, which is comfort, security, what is known, what is safe, what you're familiar with. The North Node decision is oftentimes the liberating one, the one that forces you to evolve yourself or grow in a way that's new to you, but you know deep down inside of your soul that it is the right path to take. It's just scary because you've never done it before. We're not meant to completely disregard the South Node. We're not meant to completely just dump it and never to return, to ignore the talents that we've built for ourselves. We're here to utilize the tools of the South Node in order to propel us further on our path towards the North Node. So we're not to just disregard everything that has to do with the South Node and say, oh, that's not my path in this life, so I'm not going to do anything that has anything to do with that archetype or characteristic. However, we can use those skills, tools, traits, and characteristics that are described through the South Node in ways that are balancing for us or helps to balance our decision-making skills. So the nodes travel through the zodiac every 18 years. So the north and south nodes have been in the Taurus Scorpio axis since 2022. And they've been in there since January of 2022. The nodes take about a year and a half to move through each axis. So when I say axis, I'm speaking of the polarity of the signs. So as you know, the zodiac is a circle. We go from Aries to Pisces, and every sign has their opposition. The opposition is the axis I'm speaking of. So Taurus and Scorpio are always opposite one another. Libra and Aries are opposite one another. And the nodes are moving into Libra and Aries starting July 17th of this year, 2023. This is a big one for me personally, only because my North Node is in Aries and my South Node is in Libra. So it's a what's called a nodal return for me, where the nodes or any other planet you can talk about is returning back to the same origin point in your natal chart as it was when you were born. So everyone that's born in 1987 will be experiencing a nodal return. And well, majority of you, I should say. And what happens during a nodal return is usually it's a similar to a Saturn return, where which it's a reevaluation of your life thus far. It is a coming to or coming back into alignment with your purpose and your path. It's an opportunity to reassess where you're headed in your life and put those goals in place, the big picture goals, the big why of why you're here to begin with, your purpose, to get that image very clear, to assess how far you've come, whether you are on the right path, what adjustments you need to make in order to get yourself there. If you are not, if you notice that maybe there are some distractions along the way that maybe have gotten you off the path a bit, then this is the time for many of us to figure it out. 35 years old, right? It's the beginning of midlife. The Saturn return at 28 years of age is the first coming of age transit. Saturn helps to teach us like our markers. Are we hitting our marks along the way? The Saturn cycle goes in 7 years. So the first 7 years, 14, 8, 19, sorry, 21. I'm like not good at math. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 21, 21, 28, and then so on and so forth. So also with the nodal return comes a first Saturn square. The Saturn and node cycles correspond with one another, and the way that I also describe it is you tend to focus on your south node up until your first Saturn return. So about 28, 29 years old, oftentimes we are functioning off of our innate and inherent south node traits. You'll notice that everyone's different, of course, because everyone has different planets aspecting the nodes in various places, which will, of course, change the timing of when you, I guess, quote unquote, grow up or start to focus more on that life path trajectory. For instance, people who are born on with their sun on the north node or sun on the south node may have already a preoccupation with purpose and destiny. And so it is ingrained in them to seek out that for themselves. The nodes also are what shows us in astrology the eclipses. Whenever the sun and the moon are within 10 degrees of the nodes, it means that there's either a solar or a lunar eclipse. So the sun and moon within 10 degrees of the north or south nodes will be an eclipse. So therefore, if you were born with your sun on the north or south node, also with your moon close by, then you were born close to the eclipse axis, which further emphasizes this sense of destiny that you have, or sense of purpose or drive or ambition. So let's see. Where are we at? The nodes, as I mentioned before, have been in Taurus and Scorpio since January 18th of 2022. So, what have we been experiencing collectively during that time period? Well, since January of 2022, the North Node is brought into focus for a lot of us, our relationship to money and the material plane, and our relationship to beauty and art. I think it's interesting to see that in the United States, at least, there's been a massive shift around real estate. There's been a lot of dialogue around real estate and the financial system and currency and how that currency is being used and what the future of currency is. That is, of course, not isolated to the United States, but I'm just speaking to what I know. I don't know what the North Node has been bringing up for people in other countries, but here in the US, our associations with Venusian themes, such as money and material goods, has been a huge topic. The financial system and where it's at, whether or not we're going to be in a recession, interest rates, all of that boring stuff that plays a big role in our lives, and whether or not we can afford, our basic livelihood. The nodes themselves don't determine what happens with those things, the planets determine that. However, the nodes bring into view or bring into focus. It's kind of like a magnifying glass. And so wherever the nodes are is kind of a good way of gauging what the collective is going to be more focused on for a year and a half period of time. The shift into the Aries Libra axis is going to be quite obvious for some people, not obvious for others. Again, everyone's chart is so different, so it's really going to be based off of your own personal chart. For instance, everyone born with a North Node in Aries or a North Node in Libra will experience shifts in dynamics in their lives that are hard to ignore. The South Node in Scorpio has been really interesting for us in the last year and a half. I don't know about you, but I've been, of course, as someone who's focused on wellness, um, psychology, the subconscious mind, and integrating the intellect with the physical and also the soul. Scorpio tends to rule over all of those things, such as addiction, our ability to transform ourselves, to become new. And if we think about the South Node as being a part of our charts that shows us either our shadows or our karma, baggage, what have you, with Scorpio there, or I'm sorry, the South Node in Scorpio, it's almost as if those two those two archetypes already have a very similar theme going, whereas the South Node is described as what you're kind of letting go of or moving away from or integrating within yourself. And Scorpio is similar to that in how you integrate or merge your identity with something. Usually it's another person or it's a new way of being. Scorpio is the sign that teaches us how to dissociate or disconnect from our egoic selves so that we can go through the process of regeneration and growth, which, as you if you are a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist, you'll probably have quite a bit of Scorpio in your chart or planets in the eighth house. It just goes hand in hand. That deep, penetrating curiosity of the unconscious mind and the cause and effect of trauma and rehabilitation, and the whole process and alchemization of growth through pain and trauma is a very scorpionic theme. So when we have the south node moving through there, which is what we're walking away from, we're integrating, we're kind of settling, or we're coming to terms with, it could be that, through the last year and a half, maybe we had a bit of wellness burnout, of, yes, doing the therapy, doing the work, but maybe getting a bit tired of it, wanting to live in the material a bit more, wanting to live in the shallower parts of existence, which is Taurus, doing things just for the sake of feeling good, pleasure, and not focusing on the pain and trauma and taboos of the world, which I think a lot of people throughout 2020 and 2021, we saw a lot of activism, a lot of collective passion for change that I think a lot of people got a bit burnt out, from the news, from Trump, and all of the shadows that got kicked up throughout that whole presidency. I think we were 10. I think we were a bit tired of it. And the North Node Taurus allowed us to get a bit of peace and relaxation. Of course, the struggles didn't end. However, I think we had a bit of a moment where we were ready to just take a break a little bit from the burnout and focus on healing the body, which is also Taurus, the physical sensations of existence, of healing our sensual bodies and being very present with how we're feeling in the moment, and doing things that help to nurture a more gentle existence. But now we're moving into the North Node in Aries. The North Node in Aries is kicking up that fight, that power, that competitive and passionate parts of ourselves again. So I think we had a little bit of a break when it came to working on pushing the collective into a certain arena of change and growth. And now that focus is moving more on to the individual. Aries represents the self, the individual, the singular I. And so what that means is we're going to have a lot of talk about individuality. Chiron has been in Aries for a few years already. And with Chiron in Aries, it's a wound of the self, a wound of the individual or individuated experience separate from source. And so the North Node in Aries is going to shift our focus on whether or not our relationship to individuality has been a source of freedom and empowerment, or a hindrance to the collective and our relationships. Libra. There's going to be a few different things happening with North Node in Aries. I'm just going to go ahead and start rattling off a few different things. First, on an individual level, the focus on self-power, on building up the individual person's empowerment. So, first and foremost, that could be weightlifting, weight training, more competitive force sports. Aries is a masculine sign, it's ruled by Mars, and it's initiating, it's pioneering, it's adventurous, and it's oftentimes thinking about only its own desires and animalistic instincts. It's very reactionary. So, first and foremost, a lot of us are going to be focused on taming our reactionary parts, our animalistic parts, the parts of us that immediately respond. That's our body response. We're going to focus on how we respond to things immediately and instinctually. And here's the thing, instinct and intuition are two different things. They're not the same, and they exist in two different places. Instinct exists in the body. Intuition exists in the mind. Instinct is what all of us animals have in common. It's the motherly instinct. It's the instinct which keeps us safe and alive. It's the fear response. It's the fight or flight. It's the adrenaline that pumps through our body. That's instinct. Intuition is a knowing that comes from outside of the self. It's a it's a space that we tap into. Instinct, which is very much connected to the fire element, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, is not in the mind at all. And that's why Aries is described as being very reactionary. Do first, think later. It allows the body to fully move and get what it needs without thinking, contemplating, analyzing, questioning. Aries is associated with the infant or the newborn. If you think about the instincts of a newborn, they don't think about wanting food. They don't think about survival. They just survive. They just do what they need to do to survive, which is crying and looking cute. So the instinct of a human is to cry, make noise, yell, shout when something isn't happening. And then that instinct for survival gets changed through the environment. And so, for instance, if a child cries, which is the first mode of survival, and that cry isn't met with a basic need, whether it be connection, food, changing a diaper, cleanliness, what have you, then that baby starts to adjust its instinctual responses to the environment out of the process of knowing or needing to get what it can or cannot get. If a baby cries when it's not being heard, let's say a baby cries for food and the baby doesn't get food for hours, then the baby learns that crying doesn't do anything. Crying, speaking up, saying what you need is not the method to get the needs met. You can think about your first house as in your chart or your ascendant sign as being your first instinctual reactions to getting your needs met and your relationship to that and how you've adapted to your environment to get your needs met. If the baby doesn't get their needs met, then what do? Let's say they might use manipulative tactics, and manipulative as in, well, the baby wouldn't do that. I'm sorry. That would be like an older response, when you're be able to talk or speak, but maybe they would learn that as they got older. But initially, they would just learn that they can't ask for what they need. That's not how to get it. So then they figure out other ways. Sometimes, unfortunately, that gets internalized, and then it becomes a value system of whether or not the individual deserves to get what it needs or not. Then we move into Taurus, right, which is the value system that gets developed immediately after. So we're going to be learning about all of those things for ourselves, and we may even hear about some research that comes up regarding infant development and instinctual needs, and or maybe we will get more of that in the ethers. Maybe that'll be more of a focus with wellness, or if you follow any psychiatrists or psychologists, there might be more of an emphasis on infant needs and instinctual reactions from the very beginning. Also is, as I mentioned, weightlifting, bodybuilding, self-improvement. It's improvement of the physical body. It's me. Aries is physique. The first house is physique, the self, what you look like. And so there may be also a lot of emphasis on athleticism, athletes, competitive sports. And as a Mars ruled sign, we may hear a lot more about the military industrial complex, militarization of everything. The military is probably going to have a lot of focus this year, especially during the eclipses in the fall. They might be under scrutiny, the military and military industrial complex, the fear-based responses in the military, but also in law, martial law, which is the police departments and any department that uses force to control the behaviors and collective. So think big picture, like police, security, military, anything that uses actual combative physical force is going to be in focus, in high view. Also, let's see what else. Let's talk about the South Node now. The South Node in Libra. I have this sense that there's going to be a lot of talk about being independent and doing what's right for you and doing what you need in relationships. And I'm a little worried, not gonna lie, I'm a little worried just because of how hyper focused our culture is on the individual and like boundaries and do what makes you happy and like cutting people off and like blocking people and this whole sort of like for the sake of your mental health, just push everyone away. I'm a little worried that Aries North Node might emphasize that behavior even more in our culture and forget about the need to balance the South Node with the North Node. And there might be, it's kind of like, it's just like in the Bible, like the literal translation versus the symbolic translation. Whereas the South Node Libra literal translation could be get rid of those toxic relationships that don't serve you. Or I don't know. You get what I'm saying. But as someone who is a Libra and has their South Node in Libra, I definitely have been thinking about relationships a lot my whole life. And the back and forth of whether to maintain a friendship with someone or let them go. I mean, that's something I think about a lot, not gonna lie. And I go back and forth with what's appropriate. And so I think maybe throughout the next year and a half, we'll come to some conclusions for that of what is appropriate. How do you navigate relationships, but then also maintain your independence and individuality? Um, from what I understand, or what I think at this point with the South Node in Libra, is that if we see the South Node as our shadow or the part of us that we are to integrate, then we can look at the maybe shadow parts of what Libra is. And the shadow aspects of Libra are flakiness, um, making promises, people pleasing, doing things that we think other people would want us to do rather than what we would want to do. Also, the fence sitting, which I'm for sure guilty of. Sitting on the fence, not taking sides, not wanting to make waves, wanting to be pleasant to everyone, being nice to everybody, which can seem two-faced and not honest or not real, seeming fake. And Libra likes to Libra, that's why Libra is the socialite, right? Libra is the politician because Libra knows how to placate everybody and make everybody like them. And if someone doesn't like them, then it's the end of the world and their sense of self is destroyed and their whole personal value system is down the drain. So when we think of the integration of those things in our lives, for instance, where in your life do you tend to bend your values or people please for at the detriment of your truth? And I think that's, what we will be that's what we'll experience. That's one of the big themes that we'll see come up. And some people some people should maybe people please a little more. Some people maybe don't need that message of um, you know, not being collaborative or not being um um like working well with others or compromise, I should say. The way that we utilize the higher levels of Libra in order to push us into Aries is the etiquette and diplomacy that Libra shows, and the ability to see both sides of something and maintain their truth. So, for instance, conflict resolution with friends and relationships, a Libra South Node, North Node Aries would look like, I understand and hear what you're saying, first and foremost. I get where you're coming from. I can totally understand your perspective. However, it is really important for me to dot, dot, dot. And that's something that I think hasn't been totally promoted in the way that we navigate conflict resolution in relationships, because usually it's like, yeah, just block them, or gosh, what is I can't even think of the word. It's when you just like, ghost someone. You're just like, just stop talking to them. Just completely stop talking to them. Don't give them any explanations. You don't owe them anything. Blah 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 blah. But then that's also being avoidant. It's being avoidant. And South Node Libra is learning how to be upfront with yourself and be direct and say what you mean and be very, kind of blunt. So let's see what else. Let's take a look at the charts. I've been talking long enough. I'm going to share my screen with you. And for those of you who are on Spotify, don't worry, I'm going to explain it all. You'll hear everything. And you won't even really need to see this. This is just for people who are visual learners. If you are not a visual learner, don't even worry about it. So here is here's the nodal ingress currently. This is North Node. This is the moment that the nodes shift into Aries, from Aries Libra, from Scorpio Taurus. And something really important is happening with this nodal shift. Huge, major, something really big is going on. The nodal shift this time around features a square with Pluto and also a new moon in Cancer, which is also squaring the nodes. This is a big deal. July 17th is going to be quite a, I don't want to say it's a fantastical day. It's kind of a monumental day. When the Pluto squares the nodes, it's a time when one door very clearly opens and another door very clearly closes. The nodes, when they represent karmic cycles, and Pluto, the planet of the underworld, which I guess you could say is one of the governors of karma, is coming in to sort of dictate the direction that karma is moving in the next year and a half through the North Node in Aries. This is a very big indicator of something shifting for us collectively that's going to push us in a way where it's almost as if there's no way of going back. We can no longer go back to where we were before. There's no, it's almost as if like, well, it's not almost as if, but it's very much like when you learn about something, you can't unlearn it. Once you know and understand information, or you hear about something, or you learn a secret, you can't unhear that. You have to live with that responsibility for the rest of your life, which can determine how you go about living. This is really big. This has to do with, on an individual level, changing who we are, how we see ourselves, and never being able to go back to old ways. On a collective level, especially here in the United States, it has a lot to do with the way that our government is deciding to move forward. Something is going to happen for us in the United States, and probably many other countries too, where there's going to be something that comes out, comes to light, is revealed, is unearthed, that has to do with the political structures and the power dynamics that we can't ignore anymore. So it's going to be really interesting. Also, Biden's chart, this new moon is happening in his 8th house of other people's money and shared resources and also secrets. So I really think that something is going to be revealed July 17th for us that is kind of just like collective consciousness shifting. And I know that's a really big statement to make, and I really try not to make big statements, but I'm going to go back to the last time Pluto squared the nodes and show you how big of a change that was. So in January of 2015, Pluto was squaring the nodes. That was the last time. And check it out. It was in the Libra Aries axis again. But not only that, Pluto was squaring Uranus, which is sudden change, upheaval, collective, the way that the collective functions and the collective consciousness completely changing. If you think back to 2015, that's when all of our activism was being reignited. it was predicted by my teachers that 2015 would be potent in that it would reflect the same time period and era as the late 60s and the 70s, when there was a massive cultural change when it comes to humanitarian needs, activism, equal rights, and also gender and feminism. Um, I believe 2015 or 2016 is when we had the Women's March here in all over the country. It was massive. It was huge. That was probably really the last time I actually saw all of us band together that powerfully. It showed the power of the collective force, and we rode off of that momentum for quite some time. Now that momentum is coming back. However, it doesn't have the support, or, well, it has a connection to Uranus. It's in a trine. So there is going to be a change and collective shift, but it's almost as if it's like it's not as emotionally heated as it was before. Also, back in 2015, the nodes were switched. So 2015 was, what is that? 11, or I don't remember, 12 years ago. um and so the north node was in Libra and the south node was in Aries. And so the focus was reversed, where we were working on collaborating with each other, building relationships, focusing on, love, romance, relationships, and this more of a collective process of understanding ourselves and relationships better. The last time that the nodes were in Libra Aries was in 2004, at the very end of 2004. So December, let's see, get you an exact date here. December 26th, 2004 into 2005. The whole year of 2005 is when South Node was in Libra and the North Node was in Aries. In 2005, Bush was their president, and it was the time before the 08 housing crash. I feel like, what else? I remember the protests with the banks, Wall Street. Also, there was a lot of conflict happening with Guantanamo Bay. In 2005 was the, let's see, avian flu. This is kind of interesting. Well, in 2004 was the first same-sex marriage, and in 2005 is when, and I'm reading this from thepeoplehistory.com, Oregon announced the county would begin granting licenses for same-sex marriages. The Oregon Supreme Court nullified nearly 3,000 marriage licenses issued to same-sex couples. I think that's interesting because if you think of Aries, same sex, and in the eye of the self, the individual, but also South Node Libra, which is the integration or the evolution of union. And Libra, or not Libra necessarily, but the seventh house, which is oftentimes associated with Libra, is the house of contracts and legally binding marriage contracts, which is what marriage used to be considered. Marriage wasn't for love. It was a business transaction between a man and a woman, and more so for, ownership and the continuation of the species, and marriage was seen more as a like a property or yeah, like I said, an ownership. And that's kind of a big deal with same-sex marriage becoming more, well, being legally granted, because it shows the change in our views of what marriage is. The institution of marriage is the pursuit of an individual need rather than the pursuit of a survival need, right? So we're not marrying each other for continuing on this farm and having a successor for our progeny. We're marrying for love, for our feelings, for our true passion, Aries. When we think of, I think there's also kind of a lot of misunderstandings with Libra. Libra is a very logical and non-emotional sign. It's ruled by Venus, but we can almost say that maybe Juno would be a better ruler for Libra, because Juno shows the asteroid goddess Juno describes the bond, the obligatory bond that one has towards another person based off of belief, based off of a sort of a value system or a belief system, more so than a personal desire. And I think it's really appropriate to know that the last time the North Node was in Aries, in this country, we were pioneering this wave of what the institution of marriage means to us in an individual level. So it could be that we see some changes, hopefully some advancements with the institution of marriage and also same-sex marriages moving forward. I really hope that we don't see a regression in that, which seems to be, unfortunately, with how the Supreme Court is now trying to undo a lot of the progress that we've made in the last 30 years. I was even saying, I always felt like the 90s were more progressive than they are now. It just seems like we're regressing. I mean, even when I think about pop culture and media as a child, it was so diverse. There was no need to emphasize diversity. Like, it was naturally diverse already. And like, I'm just thinking about the kids shows that I watched, like Barney or even Recess, or what other kid shows. Like, I felt as though it was diverse, or especially in pop culture and music, for instance. I mean, I'm sure that it was highly uh systemically regulated as to what was allowed and what wasn't. I mean, it still very much is, but just now it seems as though there's a program for it. It's not natural, if that makes sense. Also, we're going through something right now with the Supreme Court stepping back on affirmative action. And that whole discussion seems to be so regressive in and of itself when I see or read people's comments about how they feel affirmative action is being implemented. It's really uneducated the way a lot of people are talking about it. For instance, people think that minorities being let into an Ivy League school is to the detriment of the country and the institution of education, because it's lowering or dumbing down the institution, because they're letting people in based on their skin color. It's like, no, actually, they're not just looking at someone's skin color, they're looking at everyone's grades and their GPA, and then they're choosing the top and then bringing in conscious effort to choose and pick a variety of people from that bracket. They're not intentionally letting a smart white person lose a spot for a less smart black person. Like, this is the thinking that I've been seeing. I'm just like, what kind of logic is this? It's racist logic, obviously, but I mean, then no one complains about legacy admissions. People who are let into schools because their parents went there and because their parents donated shit tons of money. Anyway, I digress. So those are things that were going on in 2005. Let me think if there's anything else I need to talk about with this, the nodal shift. I guess the big thing is this Pluto square, because this is unusual. And the last time that Pluto was squaring the nodes was in 2015, but it's not common because it's, the nodes they're only going to square Pluto whenever they're in like a cardinal sign. This is the last cardinal square with Pluto we're going to see. The next square we're going to see is when Pluto is in Aquarius. So the nodes will be in Taurus Scorpio the next time they square Pluto, which is going to be a whole other thing, fertility, population. We just got out of Taurus Scorpio, so I think we have a bit of an understanding of what that can be. Again, real estate, again, currency, money, finance. But for now, this seems to be more of the square Pluto is individual rights, the rights to individuals making their own decisions based on their own individual needs. And the institution of marriage coming up, potentially. Let me just get the chart back to the Pluto square on the 17th. So this is also really huge because it's at the critical degree or the anaretic degree, the 29th degree into 0 degree. The 29th degree is really powerful, especially in cardinal signs, because the cardinal signs initiate change. The cardinal signs initiate a new direction, a new way. And when there is a cardinal cross, there's a very clear and distinct shift that happens. And not to mention at the 29th degree, which is this part in the zodiac where it's the last stand or it's the last draw before the fool jumps over the edge into the next degree or the next sign. So this is a very strong karmic change. And I just can't emphasize that enough. Let me think. Let me get into the weeds. Maybe there's something that I can predict here. One, as I mentioned, the military-industrial complex, I think, is going to be under scrutiny. And we've already seen a little bit of that with the David Grush whistleblower coming out to say how the military has been hiding UFO spacecraft and using that technology to its advantage, subsequently going against the Constitution because it's not sharing and opening that information to Congress. So there's going to be a Senate hearing on all of the claims that David Grush has been making on UFOs. And it may be, maybe on the 17th, we'll get a date for that hearing. And maybe in the fall, when we get the eclipses in Aries and Libra, something will come up. However, at this point, there's some big, sort of huge existential themes for us to navigate when it comes to the fact that it is true. The United States government, not the United States government, mind you, the United States military has UFO spacecraft that it's been hiding from the citizens and also Congress for the sake of its gaining more power for itself. Pluto is power. Pluto in Capricorn is power structures and systems. Pluto is also oil. What is power? Electricity, oil, solar, wind, what have you. It's literal power. Pluto is in the second house of the United States of money, finance. This is an egregious act on the military's behalf. This means that the United States military has been withholding potent, powerful technology from us, subsequently holding us back into the dark ages for the sake of its own impact on the world. What? To murder and control and dominate and colonize other countries continuously. The reason why this is a huge thing for the United States is because this means that the United States military is acting on its own behalf outside of the rule of law of the Constitution and the United States government. It's essentially acting as if it's its own government. That's a big no-no. Also, the fact that it's been withholding such potent technology, and we're talking like 0 point gravity, we're talking unlimited power. Can you imagine like everyone that in January who had to pay hundreds of dollars more for their power bill, their energy bill, because the energy companies decided to up all of our rates just magically out of nowhere for no whatever reason. Our dependence on oil, all the wars that have been going on for the sake of oil and power. It's it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. And it's also, if you think about the larger implications that this has for the country in the eyes of other countries who are watching us, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good that our government is separate from one another, that they're functioning separately and can be easily diverted from the other branches. It looks weak. It makes us look weak and it makes us look unorganized. So it's a big deal. Yeah. I don't know. Aliens, man. Disclosure is around the corner. What else could this be? Bernie Sanders just brought up a bill to audit the military. Audit. Where are all of the funds coming from? Pluto in the second house, money and finance. Pluto unveiling, revealing, revelation. So that's my say on it. I know there's going to be so much more, but that's just kind of where my brain has been going. I would love to hear what you have to say. And I would also love to hear how you're feeling the shift with the nodes and what you feel like it's going to be for you. I'm going to do an article for the Magic of I on the nodes through the houses. So look out for that. I've also written about this for Magic of I, and it's on the Magic of I's website. You can check it there. If you don't know what Magic of I is, it's an incredible astrological journal. And I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not getting paid for this endorsement. But I just am such a fan, and I think that the work that they do is fantastic. And I write for them, so you should read it, and you should also support them too. Um, what else? What else? Oh, I guess we're done now because I decided to start talking about other things. I have been experimenting with a new way of working with clients, which is doing longer coaching sessions. So that involves one hour consultation with 4 sessions rather than doing one-off sessions. I'm still doing one-off sessions. However, I'm really emphasizing this coaching package because it includes astrology and hypnosis, and we work together to create a program for you that is integrated in astrology and hypnosis. So what that means is it could be a natal chart reading, synastry reading, transits and progressions, and with the work of hypnosis to do the integrative work. Astrology is the left brain linear process of talking it out, understanding, intellectualizing. And then hypnosis is the right part of the brain where we're integrating that intuition, that awareness, and that understanding with our subconscious minds. So I'm really excited about that. I feel like this is very much my South Node Libra, North Node Aries process of integrating balance and harmony with the left and the right side of the mind to elicit change and alchemy within the body. So looking forward to working with you, and also potentially having you on as a client. If you'd like, you can go to themysticparlor.com and check that out and see if that fits with you. If not, feel free to reach out and we can talk about it, or schedule a call to see if that's going to be a good fit for you. Also, what else is there? I don't think that's much. Just look out for also my interview that I did with Laura Lawler on Alien Disclosure. Laura Lawler is the co-host of the Take Me to Your Dealer podcast, and she is a Gemini, extremely knowledgeable on all of the alien details and data and information. And we have a very good long conversation about what she thinks is happening with disclosure, just the information going on, the news reports and whatnot. Also, follow me on all the things. Follow me, like it, support it, comment. It really helps. And also, if you subscribe to my channel and also my Spotify and Apple and all those things, then I can start monetizing, and you don't have to pay me anything. All you have to do is just subscribe and be a subscriber, and then I'll just get paid from advertising companies, because I'd rather have them pay me for this content and it be free for you. So please subscribe, like, share, all the things. Tell all your friends, tell the world, tell everyone, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your estranged brother. And I will see you next time with another sesh on some other astrological or mystical topic that interests me. All right, everyone, have a lovely day, and peace be with you.